My advice is to let yourself imagine, really just let yourself dream about what it is that you want. And even if you don't know what that is literally, to connect with, how do you want to feel? What is it about your life right now that is not allowing you to feel the things you want to feel on a daily basis? For example, when I was spiraling, I could not feel freedom. I couldn't feel expansion. I couldn't feel expression. And those things became alive within me to the point where they started demanding that they take the stage.
Hi, it's Steph, and that was the voice of KRISTY Sweetland. KRISTY Sweetland. KRISTY is now an author and a transformational executive and personal life coach. Previously, however, she had a 20-year career in veterinary medicine. KRISTY says intuition and science enjoy a healthy marriage within her work, and she devotes herself to this rare balance. KRISTY and I lived in the same small town in northern Minnesota for a very short time, a long time ago. But we truly connected about 30 years later in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We communicated through email and set up a breakfast meeting. And you know that feeling when you're a little nervous to see someone who you know, but you don't really know, and you hope you'll be able to converse and eat your breakfast at the same time? I had that feeling and realized immediately all was well. No need to worry. KRISTY is an endlessly fascinating thinker and speaker and an intent and caring listener. I know this will come through for you as you hear from her today. KRISTY has written and published what she calls a memoir of coming alive, and the title is Stark Raving Zen. When I picked up this book, I could not put it down. KRISTY probes deeply into her past and reveals so much of herself that you can't help but be shaken and taken by her bravery. It's revealing of truths in her life, and it causes you, the reader, to think about the truths in your life. It's an inspiring read with so much insight woven into it. I really can't recommend it highly enough. Stay tuned till the end, and you can learn how to find and follow KRISTY online and how you can find her book and coaching services. Oh, and once you listen to the very end of each episode, I will share an example of another door opening from my own life. Sometimes a big one, sometimes a little tiny one. Nevertheless, if that interests you at all, please stick around. This is the Another Door Opens podcast, and I'm your host, Stephanie Himango. Here is KRISTY Sweetland.
Coaching to Come Alive is my business name, and my business is transpersonal psychology and transformational coaching. I met that really sweet spot in my career where I can kind of call myself whatever feels right. And I'm calling myself a transformational alchemist at this point because it's about the alchemy of the human experience, opening us to our own authenticity and our own authentic creative expression.
I wanted to ask you about transformation. I'm just going to jump to that first then. So many people crave some type of transformation, and you've truly made that happen in your life. And I just wonder, do you have rituals in your life that you've found along the way to help enable that, to help ground your transformation, and also to help sort of birth a transformation? I think that's something everybody craves, and would be curious to know how you found something that worked for you.
Ritual and ceremony are both very important to me in my life. And I really do it all through my connection with nature. So even if I can't get outside, I invoke the elements. I have a altar in my meditation room, and it has the elements of fire, water, earth, and air on it. that is something that immediately connects me to my own nature, my own connection with Mother Earth, and really being in nature when I can, working my body really hard, taking 10-mile hikes, feeling the elements on my face. That is how I stay connected and detoxified and energized.
Was there a time in your life when you didn't do that, when you didn't have that awareness of what nature and movement and breath could do for you?
Oh, absolutely. I always connected to it. I always loved it, but it was an afterthought. It was something that I did on a holiday, or it was something that I did on a long weekend. It wasn't my daily medicine. And I would say throughout my entire 20s into mid 30s, I really didn't understand how important that was to me, how critical that was for my own development and growth and transformative experiences. So it's absolutely key.
You know, I think about that in the professional realm, and you had a completely different life, which we'll get to prior to the one that you're living now. It
Hmm.
sounds to me like these things that are such a bedrock for you now perhaps were not part of your life during that time in your life, but you excelled anyway.
I excelled from the standpoint of Western culture's idea of success, but I was imploding on the inside the entire time. And it seemed that the more success I obtained in my veterinary life, the more suppressed my spirit became. It was as if at the time there was a trade-off. I had this belief that I could either be successful or I could stay attuned to my inner world and my inner life and my gifts. And that was a mythology that I really had to break, and I really had to integrate those areas of my life.
I think what you sort of have uncovered is that there really isn't a way to achieve your full potential if you don't have that bedrock, if you don't have that nutrition, if you don't have that daily medicine. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think the entire foundation of transpersonal psychology, which is my specialty, is the whole person. It's understanding that even in executive coaching or performance coaching, we can't address one area of life without bringing in all facets of life. And that's what I was trying unsuccessfully to do without even understanding that I was doing that, without even understanding that I had created this incredible separation within me and within my life.
And that brings me to the revelation. You making a change and you putting it all on paper and then you sharing it with the world. So the memoir that you have spent years working on has
Hmm.
been released into the world, and
Hmm.
it's titled Stark Raving Zen and is a
Hmm.
memoir of coming alive. Beautiful name.
Thank you.
I have to tell you, I read your book with an interest and a fascination and an attention that is unlike any other book I've ever read. It's so personal. You
Hmm.
take us so deeply into your experience. And I was also just so encouraged by the fact that you were honest in it and you were courageous in it and you were brave in it, because that enables the rest of us to be courageous and brave with sharing our story. So without giving away what the book is about, can I ask you to describe your book?
This is such an enormous and vast and beautiful question for me. It's hard for me to contain what this book means to me and how I describe it. It is as if I published a piece of my own soul. But if I had to put it in a tiny nutshell, It's easier for me to do that symbolically. So this book for me is bringing in books that have also meant a lot to me and feel woven into this experience. This book to me is Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert meets Alice in Wonderland meets My Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolte Taylor.
Ooh, so good. That's so apt because I've read the book. So I get that. Is there one that you identify with most, or does it feel like it's sort of a perfect thirds blend?
Well, it is a perfect thirds blend, but I like to anchor it with Alice in Wonderland because this is a book that, for whatever reason, enchanted me from the moment I was born, it seems, and to understand that I was sort of destined to experience it in my own personal way just anchors it into my heart so deeply. It is a journey of fantastical experiences that are really hard to fathom. While I was writing my memoir, I kept saying to myself, "Wow, how did you get through this, Christy? Did
Yeah.
this really happen? This is amazing." And it was quite an experience to be able to witness it from that grounded point of view. Whereas while I was going through it 10 years ago, it was very my stroke of insight in that I had this background in psychology and I could witness my mind unraveling. And I knew it was a journey of spirit. I knew it was the final frontier of releasing my truth and my authenticity and my spiritual expression into the world. But all of them blending together really, really is the best way I can describe Stark Raving Zen and have anyone else understand what I'm saying.
Through the book, you share so much of your inner dialogue, your family, your
Mm-hmm.
patterns, your coping mechanisms for
Mm-hmm.
the pain you've endured in your life. How important now, in retrospect, is self compassion, and how instructive is self compassion on the road to healing?
Oh, it's everything. It's everything. And when I think back to the person that I had become, who had a whole bunch of empathy for everyone else in the world, but very little for myself, it breaks my heart. And it breaks my heart today to witness so many who haven't yet connected with their own relationship to self compassion. So I think even today, I've had to really, publishing this book was terrifying. And the only way through that for me was just just loving myself with everything I had and believing in this mission and believing in why it had to be published. And I think without all of those threads of self-compassion, I wouldn't have been able to make this evolution.
I think so many of us can identify with that wrestling with self love and, having empathy for others, but perhaps not for ourselves. Do you
Mhm.
think, and also based on your academic studies and what you've learned as an expert in this field, do you think we ever stop that struggle to love ourselves? Do we get past it? Do we get through it? Do we get there? Or is it part of the journey and it's going to last forever?
I think that we can get to a foundational level of self-love. Even if we perhaps will never be able to completely shut off the inner critic, which is, I believe, useful for us up to a point. The inner critic, that voice that tells us how we're doing everything wrong or how we're doing some things wrong, can be harnessed and channeled for our growth and our own healing. There's nothing so illuminating as the inner critic to tell us where we still have work in self-love to do. But I really do believe that we can get to a place where we develop a healthy relationship with our self-worth. Even if our self-esteem sometimes struggles or sometimes falters, we can have self-worth. And that's the growth. That's the journey of transformation. And that's the journey of self-love and self-growth to me.
You had a career in veterinary medicine for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What drew you to that work in the first place? And how long did you work in that field?
20 years. I entered the field um, just as a baby. I started when I was 20. I had lost my mother at the age of 19, and I was struggling. I was in a hurricane of grief and trauma, and veterinary medicine for me created this incredible container of structure and analysis that allowed me to bypass all of those emotions that at the tender age of 20, I didn't know how to hold. I didn't know how to process or be with those. So I could hide and immerse myself in science and in looking at through a microscope and also channeling the love and the hurt and the pain that I had in the little patients that came through our door every day and in the people who were struggling with grief over their own beloved animal who was going through something. It was such a healing experience for me and just a sacred container, a sacred family that I developed. It formed my entire identity. I could just go on all day about what my 20 years in veterinary medicine did for me.
And that was such a long road and a long 20 years. And you outline that in your book really well, and you take us through the really, really deep and dark times you experienced. This is taking a big leap forward. But how did you know it was time to change something? And how did you turn to writing as a form of self-expression while you were having that realization?
I feel like on some level I began to die. And very literally, I mean, I had blood pressure so high that it could not be controlled. And I believe there was a definite spiritual component to that. I talk about in my book that I struggled with an eating disorder for much of my life. And I feel like doctors really thought, well, you've damaged your body. I suffered from anorexia for many years and then orthorexia. So they kind of just thought, okay, you've got this uncontrolled high blood pressure because you've sustained some damage by how you lived your life or how you struggled with this for so many years. It was my body. It very specifically told me I had these physical maladies that could not be contained. Massive migraines, massive high blood pressure, anxiety disorder. I had OCD that was overtaking me. I had profound depression. And the frustrating aspect of it was that there was really nothing that I hated about my work. There was nothing about it that would explain my whole life, my whole being sort of crumbling before my eyes. So it was as if the universe really just put a period on the end of the sentence and said, you can't continue. What created a spark in me was the beginning of blogging. I randomly started a blog, and And I thought, I'm going to just see if this somehow provides enough creative expression for me so that I can survive this life. And I had no idea that it would create an inferno inside of me that could not be contained creatively.
Let's elaborate on that a little bit. What did it mean to you to write it all down, to relive it, and to share it?
I had no idea that I had lived my entire life within a container of repression and suppression so tight it was likely to kill me. And the first moment, the first entry of my blog, which was titled Stark Raving Zen, I felt for the first time in my life what it meant to stop censoring myself and express myself truthfully.
What's your advice to people who maybe are starting to get the more gentle nudges from their profession, that there's something else for them, but it hasn't come full blown in the form of migraines and diminished health and, slow death, as you described it?
My advice is to let yourself imagine, really just let yourself dream about what it is that you want. And even if you don't know what that is literally, to connect with, how do you want to feel?
Mhm.
What is it about your life right now that is not allowing you to feel the things you want to feel on a daily basis? For example, when I was spiraling, I could not feel freedom. I couldn't feel expansion. I couldn't feel expression. And those things became alive within me to the point where they started demanding that they take the stage. So, what is it that you continually say no to because you feel that it's not practical, or it's you're not able, or it's too big, it's too grand, it's too elaborate a vision for you? Just allow yourself, my advice is to let yourself imagine some of these things without expectation of outcome. And I think that's the first step. And I truly believe that these things that we are being asked to express and form and develop and embody in this world are alive within us. They will show you the next step.
You give so much hope because you have lived it. You are not telling us a hypothetical. You took a really hard, bumpy, dark journey
Oh,
and
yeah.
beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
but tough to get there. Now that you have not only recognized it for yourself, but put it out into the world, you shared your truth with the world. What has happened since then? Have you felt a new sense of peace or freedom that you talked about? What has happened since you released your truth into the world?
What has happened since I released Stark Raving Zen? Oh, it's so hard for me to even. I'm tearing up because it was such a terrifying thought. It's this. This is an incredibly vulnerable book, and it's really hard to have people understand what an introvert I am, how private I am, because I'm constantly expressing myself in really deep ways. But to have this released into the world feels like I have had a 5,000-pound gorilla in my energy field for 10 years. And I've been carrying it around, and I can feel its weight. And I know how beautiful it is. I know how it needs to live its own life. And now it's been released. And all of the anticipatory fears that I had prior to releasing this book, like people are going to think I'm nuts, people are going to think this is too crazy to believe, people are going to hate me, people are going to criticize me, that all just disappeared. It just completely evaporated in the face of actually doing the thing and putting it out there and seeing that none of those things came to me to the point that I feel inoculated against all of those fears. Even if they were to come true at some point, there is nothing that could compare with the thought of birthing my truth in this way, and the beautiful feedback and input and testimonials and private messages that I've received as a result of just bearing my soul in this way and having people say it just I feel a new freedom in my life too. So there's nothing that can compare with that. No fear that could stand in the face of that.
You have such an energy about you, and it's palpable through your writing. You don't even need to stand in your midst, but it's definitely felt in your midst. Do you feel like you have been energized now that you found a geographic place where you love to be?
Absolutely. I feel like I was energized by the spiritual emergency that I went through, that I write about in Stark Raving Zen. That all took place in New Mexico. But having then made the decision to relocate to New Mexico, again, it feels like I'm on the verge of tears. It it powers me in a way that no other geographical location has even come close to powering me. Um, I am so in love with this place on the map. I could just talk forever about my love for New Mexico.
Well, I love your Instagram posts because they take us there. They take us there in its wide open spaces and that rugged terrain and that beautiful sky. And you show us that in the pictures, but you show us yourself in the picture as well sometimes, like far, far away, and there you are a little bit. And I think it helps us immerse as well. It takes us there. I mean, I really do think you can feel it when an image is placed there by somebody whose energy you resonate with.
Yeah.
It's felt. It's deeply felt. And so thanks.
Thank you. Well, thank you for acknowledging that. I do. I was born animistic. I think everything has a spirit. I think everything is alive. My family thought I was just a weirdo my entire life. But I do feel New Mexico is alive and has a spirit. And I think New Mexico loves to share itself and fan its feathers like a peacock. And it is a royal, regal portal to Mother Nature. So if I can be a little bit of an ambassador and for that energy, then gosh, I'll do the best I can.
The thing is, right now you have this energy and you're taking that energy and you're pouring it into other people.
I think it's exactly why I was put on this earth. Nothing has ever charged me like that charges me. I deeply love the people I work with. They awe me and inspire me on a daily basis. The transformation, the courageous growth that anyone entering a transformational journey undergoes is nothing short of awe-inspiring. There's nothing that compares to the power of the human spirit. And You follow me on all platforms. You see my personal Facebook book page is nothing but animals.
Yes,
I
I love
am
it.
still, I am still more connected to the animal kingdom than probably anything on earth. But my work belongs, and my gifts really are expressed through the realm of spirit and human evolutionary growth. So yeah, I'll never stop doing this. I will be doing this when I'm 95 years old. It doesn't feel like work to me. It feels like divine purpose. And there's that battery's never going to run out.
No, no, it just continues to get stronger.
That's what I feel too.
I have one more question for you, and then I want to
Mm-hmm.
ask you where people can find you online so they can go
Mm-hmm.
buy your book and follow you on all the platforms. What do the words "another door opens" mean to you?
Oh, again, I feel like I'm going to have some tears. Another door opens feels to me like people said, how did you get from there to here? Like, how did you undergo all of that demolition? And how did you survive that? And how were you courageous enough to undergo that? First of all, it had nothing to do with courage. At the time, I felt like I was following breadcrumbs. But there is literally a piece in my book, Stark Raving Zen, where I come to this magical place in New Mexico where all of these it was an art um, installation, a permanent art installation in the middle of nowhere that had all of these doors that just opened. They were framed and embedded there in the landscape, but there was nothing around them. And I just opened every single one of those doors and shut it behind me. And what I saw was me transcending all of these phases of my life that were incredibly painful, but more valuable than I could ever express. And just with each door opened and closed behind me, I felt like I was reaching this new level inside of me. And the name Another Door Opens feels nothing less than sacred to me. It's about our journey as human beings through this incredible thing called life.
People need to hear your voice every day. Where can they find you online? Where can they buy your book?
They can buy my book anywhere. It's available in independent bookstores, online. It's available through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble, through just really every platform. My website is coachingtocomealive.com. You can also find me if you just Google KRISTY Sweetland. And I have a Facebook fan page with the name KRISTY Sweetland. And on Instagram, I am at KRISTY Sweetland. Probably those are the platforms I spend most of my time on.
I forgot to ask you how you came up with Stark Raving Zen as the
I
title.
I feel like I was given it by spirit because I was sitting on my couch at the time in Belle Plaine, Minnesota, after an exhausting long day at work, and I opened up my laptop and I said, "You know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to start a blog just as a creative exercise. What will I call it?" And instantaneously, the voice a voice came to me that said Stark Raving Zen.
Done.
Yeah. And
It was
I was
done.
just like, what? I could never have come up with a name that perfect because that was the battle. That was the whole story. Me, this hyper controlled version of myself, this wild version of myself that demanded expression, the two colliding. That is the story of Stark Raving Zen.
It has been such an honor to spend time with you and to talk to you at length for the first time in a long time.
There are few people in this world I admire more than you, Stephanie. You are so dear and wonderful, and I love you so much. And I'm so grateful that you had me on your show and that we could talk like this. Thank you.
Remember, the idea behind this Another Door Opens podcast is to open doors, open hearts, and open minds. Everyone has a story to share and lessons that we can learn from them. Every week, you'll meet someone new and interesting here to download some of their life insights. I mean, why not? Also, please continue to download the podcast, share it with friends, and hop onto iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to it. If you've enjoyed it, please take a few minutes to give it a 5-star review and share it with your friends. You can follow the Another Door Opens podcast online at podcastado on Instagram and Twitter. That's at podcastado. Before I share my story of another door opening today, I want to thank Eric Brown, who made those funky beats in Los Angeles. And thank you to Jonathan Raz, who edited the podcast from Berlin. And to my guest, KRISTY SWEETLAND. Thank you for your insights and depth and for the story of your own transformation, so beautifully crafted in your book, Stark Raving Zen. Okay, I told you guys that at the end of each episode, I'd share a story of another door opening from my own life. This one takes place in 1993. I had just moved to Hong Kong from Two Harbors, Minnesota, and I was enrolled in a graduate program at Hong Kong University and was looking for information about studying martial arts as a way to get involved in athletics as an adult, on the side, an extracurricular. I'd always been fascinated by martial arts, but didn't know anything about them. And as I was walking on campus one day, I saw a simple piece of paper on a bulletin board with a drawing of a person in a karate gi and phone numbers to rip off at the base. I took a number and called, not knowing if it was advertising karate or judo or something else. And it was karate. And a new session was about to begin. So I joined and I went to practice in my very new, very crisp, very thick canvas gi. And I felt like I was going to die that first night of training. Located at 22.3 degrees north latitude, Hong Kong's summers are very hot and very humid. Something in the practice really, really appealed to me, and I stayed. And I can say that for a long, long time, karate was my favorite thing to do. I practiced religiously for the nearly 6 years that I lived in Hong Kong, and I competed in many, many tournaments. I am grateful to my tough but wonderful instructor, aka Sifu, aka Zheng Xiugong. Karate will forever be an integral part of my growth. Okay, that's the door. Hop on Instagram and tell me in the comments about a door opening for you. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you guys next time. Okay, love you, bye.